Today we have three pretty fantastic early stage businesses from three universities, UC Davis in California, UNSW, and University of Sydney here, and AgTech, a consultancy here in Sydney, pushing the industry forward. Before I hand it over to Tom, today's moderator, I'd like to thank our community manager, Sarah Lacroix at the Sydney Knowledge Hub, for organizing today and lots of events as part of the Spark Festival and bringing such an interesting together. Tom, over to you.
Great, thank you, Rupal. And good morning to everyone who's joining in from wherever you are around the world. Thank you for joining in. We've got a really exciting lineup of speakers today, and I'm really excited to dive into it. But just very quickly, I'll go over some of the housekeeping and some of the scene setting. So we're going to start right after this, and today we're going to go until 8:50, and we'll stop right on the dot there because we've got a few other events as well. We do have Q&A functionality, so I think that's on Slido, and there should be a link that was sent around on that. So feel free to throw in your questions. Just by very quick introduction, so my name's Tom. I'll be the moderator for today, and my role, my day job is that I am the research theme leader for AgTech and Environment at the New South Wales Smart Sensing Network. I represent a number of universities in New South Wales and ACT, very much along the lines of what Rupal just mentioned, is that we're trying to create innovation through collaboration by working across universities, government, and industries, and trying to really bring environmental and AgTech technologies to life. Now, rather than me, we've got a very exciting number of speakers who are doing this today as we speak, and I think I might just start by doing a round of introductions. So I'll go around our speakers today, and if you could please let me know your name, your company, and what you do. Maybe if you could also mention physically where you're calling in from, because we've got a few people from different areas. And if you could also include what really is your secret power, whether that's your company's secret power or your personal one as well. So if you don't mind, if I start with Saron, please.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, everyone. My name is Saron Behane. I'm a biomedical engineer and microbiologist by background, and I'm also one of the founders of BioScout. BioScout is an ag tech company that is automating the process of airborne disease tracking for farmers and agronomists to improve on-farm spray efficiency. So we're based in Sydney, Australia, and actually have origins in the University of Sydney. I think in terms of my secret power, I'd probably say that I am probably a really good listener. And I think that has really helped in the transition from a background in kind of the medical industry to the agriculture industry, where farmer inputs and really understanding the world and the problems that farmers are solving for has really helped us adapt our technology for Australian global farms as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Saron. And moving on, can I go to Doug, please?
Yeah. My name is Doug Cook, and I'm a professor at the University of California, Davis, which is one of the major agricultural universities in the United States. We're located just east of San Francisco by about an hour and a half. And I'm also the founder and chief scientific officer for a new startup, about a year old now, by the name of Nusicer. And Nusicer's focus is plant-based protein. We are a public benefits corporation, which means we embrace and that designation gives us the capacity to do things in the interests of public good that other companies might not do. For example, in the course of developing plant-based proteins, we also focus on sustainability, particularly nitrogen and water, which our crop and our material is well suited for. I was asked to sort of give a slightly longer introduction, so let me briefly say that I don't know that I have a secret power, but maybe one of the unique aspects that I bring to the discussion is the opportunity to talk a little bit about the way companies emerge from universities in the United States, using UC Davis as an example, and how companies get founded. How does intellectual property get separated? How do we raise funds? How do universities help us navigate the beginning of founding a company without impeding our ability to become separate? And we've Nusicer has done all of those things, and hopefully we've done them properly, and I'm happy to talk about those later.
Thanks, Lack. I'll definitely take that offer and ask about the US perspective as well. I think we've got a lot to learn from there. Just moving on though, so we'll go to Alex, please.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm Alex Suryadi, the co-founder and CEO of LIF. It stands for Light Emitting Agriculture Film. So I'm calling from Sydney. I'm an adjunct lecturer in UNSW as well, which is a university that really doesn't have much agriculture activities, but there's a lot of knowledge and technologies that's available that can be applied to agriculture, which I think that's my personal superpower. It's being able to connect the dots and how to use different technology for different fields. For leaf itself, our superpower is we can supercharge sunlight for super growth. We create a luminescent material that convert the sunlight, or can be other lights as well, into a light that is more beneficial for the plant to grow and increase the productivity per square meters for the farmers. That's it. Thank you.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks so much, Alex. And we'll uncover more about everyone's technologies as we go through the conversation. And then last on Sarah, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm Sarah Nillette, based here in Sydney, Australia, despite the American accent. I'm from California originally, and our company, I'm a co-founder at Tenacious Ventures. We are a dedicated agri-food tech venture capital firm here in Australia, and I guess our superpower is that we spend 100% of our time in agriculture technology and thinking about the business models and innovations that will build the future of food and help agriculture transition toward a carbon neutral and climate change resilient future. And we're really fortunate to bring a range of different perspectives, some from ag and some from tech, into what we do, but are really excited to spend all of our time working in this space and helping entrepreneurs to succeed.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sarah. So I think I deal with a lot of, ag solution providers in my work, and the unique thing about today is we've got a whole list of people who really came out of the university, and I think this is really the theme of today. And it's not a traditional route for a person studying at a university. I know that's changing over the last few years, but I just wanted to get a flavor of how that happened through our speakers today. And then if I could go back to Suron. You've got this amazing company now, but could you tell me a little bit about how that went from your studies at the universities and how it came to where it is today?
Definitely. BioScout has, quite an interesting story in that it actually formed from some PhD research and honours work that we were doing at the University of Sydney. So myself and my two other co-founders, one was doing a PhD and myself and Henry were doing an honours thesis. And we were looking at different aspects of this essentially disease management system with industry. And we were fortunate in that through a number of sort of innovation programs through the university, we were sort of encouraged to explore commercial pathways in kind of taking our technology from the lab to the actual field. And so given that we did have student IP, it was a relatively straightforward process. We took advantage of amazing innovation programs at the university. So programs like Incubate, which is kind of a 3-month incubator accelerator program, Inventing the Future, which is sort of a cross-disciplinary project where we are essentially working with everything from UX designers to law students to business students to really help us expand our knowledge and, I guess, perspective of how BioScout could actually be taken from just sort of like a little research project. I think fast forward to a couple of years' time where we were able to grow and expand our team and actually have devices and units out in the field. So ours is really a story of student IP that we were able to take from idea to commercialization.
I find it really interesting in your story because in the initial stage you're looking at, so you just said medicinal kind of medical applications, and then you kind of made this switch to ag. Is that something that happens all the time at uni? Like you're talking to people from different faculties? Is it very interdisciplinary?
I think so. I think particularly in kind of the engineering faculty where you have such incredible sort of primary research and cutting edge technology that's being developed. And so there are, what I found, quite a lot of cross applications with the technology that we were building. So as I mentioned earlier, being a microbiologist, I was always really interested in understanding how, we could better manage and monitor the spread of diseases in clinical-based settings, so places like hospitals and surgical wards and things like that. And so I think with the collaboration across faculties, looking at the School of Biomedical Engineering and SIA, or the Sydney Institute of Ag, I think it was clear that there was a lot of cross applications, and I think we're fortunate in that the university did have so many opportunities and pathways for us to and do that. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Excellent. It's great to hear that we're not just staying inside our little faculties and talking across. And I do know Sydney Uni has a very strong focus on agriculture. But I guess let's maybe stay in Sydney. So going over to Alex at UNSW, you just mentioned just now that UNSW doesn't have maybe a particular focus on this. So how did you go from what you were doing at UNSW to ag? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think my background is I grew up in Indonesia, and I've always been in the agribusiness family. So I do have that agriculture background since I was a kid. I pretty much grew up in the factory where my dad was setting up to make crop protection products. So for Leaf, actually, the inventor is my current co-founder, and he was working on this technology for photovoltaic application. And me and him, we happened to share an office during our postdoc time. And when we met, we have a chat. We both named Alex, by the way, but that's not the main intention. Just happened to be. He was developing this material for photovoltaic, and I saw it, and then I thought, hold on, that can be used for agriculture application as well. So from then on, we start setting up an idea, having a plan on how to translate this into the field. We start making prototypes, and we are lucky that we supported by UNSW, and we also have an ARC linkage, which is supported by the Australian Research Council, and that's how we come up together. And personally, also, because at that time I was actually a researcher in UNSW working on polymer material for biomedical application. Then we have to go through the negotiation on the IP and how we're going to form this company. But we're just being very open with the UNSW offices and managed to get through all of that quite smoothly.
Excellent. So it's a very smooth process going through, and that's good to hear. And I think that's the way we should be changing to. And over to Doug. So obviously in the US, maybe a little bit of a different story, but could you tell us the way you got into Nusicer?
Yeah, I've spent the majority of my career, now 30 years, studying legumes, and Nusicer's focus, by the way, is a legume, chickpea, which parenthetically is Australia is the largest producer of chickpea outside of India in the world. But I had spent my whole career working on legumes, and we had made a number of observations about 6-7 years ago now. We went back to the center, one of the origins of agriculture in southeastern Turkey, with funding from the Australian Grains Research and Development Corporation, by the way, which got us started. And then we obtained resources from a number of other groups, and it turned into just about a $20 million investment. But this has nothing to do with corporation, it has to do with basic science. In the course of working on chickpea and the species that predated the crop, its wild relatives, we identified a number of traits that clearly could have value, agronomic value, and could have commercial value, and among them was super high protein content, as well as a number of related traits that affect climate resiliency, related to nitrogen, related to drought, related to heat, and so on. And it became clear that a traditional funding of a university lab, while it was a great way to make observations and generate data, probably it wasn't the way to see things get commercialized. And one thing led to another, and with my CEO and another co-founder, we decided the best way to take some of our observations, which we thought were important, and get them commercialized was to start a company. And we did that with the significant help of the University of California, Davis, and other resources, and now are an independent entity, taking the observations made in the university lab, but applying them using a different set of priorities in a company.
Great. I'd like to know a little bit later on about all the supports that you got from your university. But at this point, I want to go to Sarah and just ask. So we've got, if I got this correctly, so we've got Saron, who's working on analyzing airborne diseases. We've got Doug, who's working on a high-protein chickpea, and then Alex working on a new way to capture light and make plants grow faster. In your dealings with companies, are these the kind of typical companies you deal with in terms of the technologies and?
Yeah, I would say what's really exciting about agriculture technology right now globally, and especially in Australia, is the range of solutions that we're seeing and the range of the technologies that are enabling those new businesses. So we at Tenacious look across the whole supply chain. So pre-farm gate, farm gate, post-farm gate into processing and packaging. And so all of these innovations are squarely in the middle of the kind of stuff we're seeing, but they're really just scratching the surface of the types of innovations that we're excited about across the food system to deliver more sustainability and help farmers be more profitable. So these are, I think representative, but really just scratching the surface.
Great. So I guess you have this role at Tenacious Ventures, and I'm sure you have a great portfolio of companies. Can you give us a flavor about how many of those, or what kind of portion of those are kind of really deep university tech? And is that something that you are really interested in looking into?
Yeah, I would say so. We've made 4 investments so far, and of the 4, all of them have done work or collaborated with universities in some ways. Not all of them have, a direct spin out or IP relationship, but they've all had collaborations with publicly funded research in some ways. For us, the exact kind of relationship probably matters less than that the company has really good scientific and technical integrity and credibility, and that they have the freedom to operate in terms of their IP, because, for us to invest, we are choosing to back what we think will be the winner. And if they're encumbered somehow or limited somehow because of the relationship they have with the university, then that poses a problem for us. So it's not a particular, magical silver bullet that we look for, but there are a couple, pitfalls that we do see, and increasingly in Australia, especially, we're seeing better maturity around and sophistication around how startups can work with universities through programs like Incubate, like Saron mentioned, and other opportunities to kind of spin out this work and really see the impact across the sector.
Excellent, thanks so much. So let's touch on that. So I suppose all of our startups here have gone through some kind of incubator program, without pointing out anyone in particular. But how has joining an incubator kind of helped your process? Because I know you must all be scientists by training or engineers by training as well. Is anyone able to give a plug for what those incubate programs have enabled or fast-tracked?
I can describe the situation at Davis, if that would be.
Yeah, so
I'll do it very
let's go to
quickly.
the US. Yes, please.
Yeah, so there are basically 2 types of resources we took advantage of. One is sort of brick and mortar incubator, where we have access to lab space and field space and so on. And the other one, which in the end it turns out to be more important, is advice and training in many, many different areas, from dealing with intellectual property and freedom to operate, for example, to understanding how to do customer engagement, identify markets, assess markets, realize what the value chain looks like. And we've had many different resources, some from the University of California, Davis, some from the National Science Foundation, others from private philanthropies that have really given us a jump start. Because if we had to learn all of this stuff from scratch, I think we would we would have been sunk. We're not just scientists. In our case, we have business people involved as well, but still, it's a steep learning curve, and there's a lot of resources available.
If I come back to the Australian companies, maybe Saron, do you have the same thing, similar experiences? Did you find that the incubators were really enabling to boost your business? And I suppose if there was any support, Doug mentioned some support from the NSF, so just wondering how you really kind of got kicked off.
Definitely, yeah. I think BioScout's a little bit different in that we have quite a strong technical sort of team. So I think our backgrounds are really centered around the actual device building and the technology that we're actually taking to the field. And so in the earlier stages of the business, the incubators and the accelerators that we did really helped to transition us from being so product-led and product-focused to actually being customer-centric and on the problem that we're solving, as opposed to trying to fit this solution that we were building to some application within the agriculture industry. And that was a really critical learning for us early on, especially because we were actually a drone company initially. So we had built a version of the units that we have now, but actually mounted them on drones and flew them around wheat fields in northern New South Wales. And one of the critical learnings that we had was through sort of an incubator program that really encouraged and pushed us to go out and regularly speak to farmers who are essentially our end users. But we quickly realized how impractical it is to actually use a drone to sample, airborne particles. Legislation just wouldn't allow it, and also the farmer's got so much to do during their day. It just doesn't really make sense for them to, try and fly out one little drone that can only go out for 15 minutes a day to sample this critical information. So we put that input from the end user was so important. I think it was kind of in the initial stages, the incubators and accelerators that really helped push our kind of understanding of that. And then I think we recently completed an accelerator program called Spark Labs Cultivate, which is sort of a more ag-focused, longer-term program. And I think that really helped take us from, sort of really focused on the commercialization aspect to really understanding the market and understanding, market trends and how we sort of fit into the broader landscape of things. So, definitely really critical support there. I think BioScout has done really well from those programs.
Yeah. And I understand, I think 80% of these programs is really doing that door knocking that you were mentioning. And is that literally what you did? You went up to a lot of farmers and growers and just really get their opinions about the tech and how they would use it?
Definitely. I think it was maybe a bit uncomfortable at first because you're literally going out there and putting yourself out there, but it's that feedback loop and that not only connection with the person who's using your technology in the end, but actually really understanding their entire farming systems and the way that your technology is sort of fitting into their world. I think as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you're often thinking about your own technology and the work that you're sort of doing, but it's really important to place yourself in their world and see how that sort of fits into their system. And I think that was a big learning for us, going from a drone company to kind of a stationary sensor company. It was the feedback from a farmer as well that really helped us understand that. But getting out there and talking to farmers, really great.
And a question I get quite often in my role is that, especially with university technologies, tend to be a little bit deeper, a little bit more grounded in, I guess, a fundamental scientific breakthrough. How is it when you pitch these kind of solutions to growers and farmers? How's the technology adoption rate? I mean, do you find it that they're very accepting of the technology, or is there a friction there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in sort of overall, we find that reception and basically adoption of technology is really there. Like, farmers are really wanting to utilize the latest technology that's going to help them improve yields or quality or overall productivity. I think that farmers get a bad rap often for being maybe resistant to technology, and often the agriculture industry is touted as the least digitized industry in the world. But I think that for the most part, farmers are really open to using this technology. I think the big thing is that in order to get a farmer to use the technology that you're using, you can't just sell them empty promises or vague sort of guarantee your technology is going to do. I think it's really important to show them the facts and show them how it is you're going to improve their yield by 5 times and actually spell that out to them. And I think maybe that's often where they sort of get where that maybe tension and resistance comes from. But for the most part, they're really on board with doing this and understand that this is where the future of agriculture is going. So yeah, definitely.
Great. Thanks so much. And I think just on topic, and I'm going to try and do this as smoothly as I can. I am getting questions kind of rolling in, and I'll try and pick them when the timing is right. So we've got a question here which says that I saw most of the solutions here are for farmers, and how do you get connected to farmers? So I think that's about what we're talking at the moment. So maybe to our founders, how do you actually get that connection happening? There's door knocking, but I think, are there other ways that, Alex? Yep.
I can start with that. I think to continue from the before, it's similar because for us, and if we also come out from the science or engineering background, and we join accelerator called GrowLab in Sydney, and we just finished another one called Singapore Football in Singapore, because that's related to how we get connected to farmers. A lot of times these accelerators, which Sarah, of course, is a mentor in GrowLab, really help us connecting us to the potential customer farmers. And also importantly, sometimes it's not connecting to the farmers itself, because when we look in the supply chain for what we are doing, and I'm pretty sure similar to what everyone is doing, you need to go through a certain distributors or a certain manufacturers, and maybe our technology does not reach the farmers directly, but maybe through these channels. And the connections that we make to manufacturers, distributors is also very important on delivering our product to the farmers. For us as well, because we're making something new that is not available in the market right now, we have to show to the farmers on how these things actually works, how that simply by putting a thin film that changing the light can improve their crop productivity is not something that they're used to. So another thing that we can reach them or reach the farmers is by working with also with universities. So for example, we are working with Western Sydney University right now to validate our technology both scientifically and in a commercial scale. And we literally connected to them through the growers. We visit the growers, and then they say, our setup is not designed for trials. How about you contact our partners in Western Sydney University? And also the state governments, getting a connection to the state governments. There's different projects or grants available. And also in New South Wales, DPI, they also have research centers. And we are about to do a research project with them, but the focus is on commercialization to show that this technology works in this system. And they have a networks of farmers that they're connected to or they're supporting to, and that's how we are going to be connected to the growers.
Great. Thanks, Alex. I just had another question here, and this might go to a point.
Oh,
yeah, sure.
Sorry, Tom.
Go ahead,
I was
Sarah.
just going to add.
No, go ahead.
Connect a couple dots there. So we see a bunch of ways that startups are connecting with growers, from ones like Alex said, programs like Saran said, and then we see conferences and events tend to attract a lot of early adopter growers who are coming along to see these technologies. Twitter is maybe an underutilized one, often just putting out a, hey, I'm doing this. Does anyone want to have a chat? Introductions, we get asked often to make introductions or tap into networks. So mentors in these programs, and then direct outreach to grower groups and peak bodies and industry organizations to say, hey, I'm looking for growers that are roughly this size, this shape with these interests, and can we we have a chat, or what would be a good event to come connect with them. So one thing that's great about the agriculture industry is there is a real hunger for technology and for these new solutions. But if you just kind of sit back and wait for someone to talk to you, it's definitely not going to work. So getting out there and being really proactive. The other thing I was just going to touch on, Tom, that kind of came up before that I think Saran's example is a really good one of is a lot of these incubator and accelerator programs are fantastic at helping make the jump from does it physically work or scientifically work to how would I present it to market and how can I actually move the needle for a customer and their economics. And that's the big kind of shift we see often at the end of these programs is, moving from does it work to how can I make it work for a customer? What would the business model or channel be? But not in all cases, to Alex's point, do you actually sell directly to farmers? So sometimes there's intermediaries there that you have to explore as well. And getting into all these complexities is definitely something that many of these programs can help with, as well as that direct outreach and getting out into the industry and into the regions.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And sorry, there's just more and more questions coming through, but I think on that point, I think we might just go a little bit back. So all the companies here are coming out of universities. There's just a question here about saying, do the university hold shares in the companies presenting? If so, does that impact publicly funded research being available to others? So I'm not sure what you can disclose, but I guess what's the university's involvement in your companies beyond? I think maybe Doug, if you could give us your perspective, or is there?
Yeah, in our case, we're in the University of California will own a small fraction of the company, a fraction of a percent, but they are silent partners. They're not on the board. They don't influence what we do. They have no say in it. In fact, so this creates a firewall of a sort. The intellectual property is completely separated. So there's no overlap. We don't retain any. If for example my lab at the university made a new discovery that the company thought would be useful, we'd have to go back and negotiate a license or other intellectual property. So we're fully separate, despite the fact that the university will own a fraction of a percent of the company. I don't know if that answers your question adequately, but.
Yes, and I think it's much the same with the other two, Saron and Alex. Anything else to add?
For us, the IP is owned independently by LIF, and the university doesn't have any ownership of our company actually. But I think that can be different for any different startup, depending on how it's set up. I think that's just how we set it up in the beginning. And the disadvantage of that is just personally, that's mean I few years ago I have to make the conscious decision that I'm going to run a company and stop being a researcher and lose the financial benefit of working at the university.
Great, and I think it's a change that's a trend that's happening over the last few years, and I think it's fantastic to see more researchers becoming more entrepreneurially minded. And I think I might go back to Sarah. I just want to talk about this point actually. So there is this kind of perception from outside the universities when I talk to people that there's a lot of red tape involved with getting involved in universities. And I know you just mentioned that you have some works with universities. I mean, how do you see it over the last 5 years, and how is it improving? Do you have any opinions about how we could do this better in terms of translating technologies out of universities?
Yeah, I would say each one is different, and we're definitely seeing more maturity and understanding of what it takes. It was interesting, actually, implicit in that question before, Tom, was this kind of sense that if you work with a startup and give them the IP, that everyone won't benefit and there won't be this public benefit. And I would argue that it's actually the opposite, that if we don't empower the private sector to commercialize innovations and do the work that they're highly incentivized to do of getting these products and services in the hands of users, it's just going to sit on a shelf gathering dust. And actually it's way worse than if we kind of harness the power of entrepreneurs to deliver that impact. In terms of how we do that, there's a range of different models, but thinking about how to align those incentives and enable the companies to attract the talent and resources and capital that they need. One of the ways we're increasingly excited and seeing is leveraging the know-how of the universities as much as the IP. So one of the great things about researchers is they've had to try 100 different times to figure out if something works. And so they know the 99 ways that it won't work. And that kind of know-how or experience is super valuable to startups. And so how can we partner with companies to make sure they don't have to retry those 99 ways and figure it out again? So maybe that's access to equipment, facilities, lab space, expertise, talent in exchange for equity, and thinking more about those kinds of relationships as much as we're thinking about that IP relationship and licensing as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I've just got another question here. I'm sorry, it's a little bit maybe off the topic, but I'm just wondering if the panel members can answer this question from Clarissa. It says, what are the benefits of having a shorter supply chain between farmers and consumers? And I suppose this is quite a broad question. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that one.
Actually, I'd be curious, Doug, what you think about that in the protein space. Yeah, how is that kind of changing?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that a short supply chain is necessarily you want one that's efficient and that meets the needs of the particular situation. So in the case of protein, depending on the type of protein that's being sourced, the supply chains can be quite complex, or they might be difficult to access. And of course, that creates complications. One of the things that Nusicer, our company, aims to do is to simplify the supply chain by creating a bean that, in fact, incorporates more of the properties that our customers need. I don't know if that answers the question. Certainly, we think about supply chains, but I would say that that topic is a bit idiosyncratic. That is, it's a different discussion for each particular commodity or each particular item.
One thing I would just jump in on, if that's all right, Tom, is especially in COVID, we're seeing a huge interest from producers to think about different supply chains and more direct to consumer models. So one of the things that we do is run a program called Farmers to Founders, where we work directly with producers on innovation, adoption, including value adding. And we just, opened applications for our ideas program, and we had over 50 applications, and so many of them were for value adding and direct to consumer models. Producers just realizing the opportunity to get closer to their consumers and deliver more of what they want and capture more of every dollar that consumers are willing to pay. So I would say from our perspective, we're seeing demand for that on the consumer side and increasing on the producer side. And where it gets exciting is the technologies and business models in the middle that can enable that.
Great. Fantastic. So it's interesting how you mentioned the kind of the COVID and the recent changes. I mean, has that impacted any of the companies, how you guys operate, or what you're seeing in terms of demand? Anybody want to comment about how the companies have changed in the last year?
Yeah, I think in terms of the market, we just finished a Singapore football program in Singapore, and Singapore have this really aggressive program that it's called Singapore 30 by 30, whereby they want to have 30% of their fresh fruit vegetable produced by 2030, and that's really ambitious. And that's because that's become more accelerated since COVID, because Singapore, I think, get 90% of their food from overseas. So with this program, there is a big program on increasing production locally within Singapore. And Singapore, as you guys probably know, it's a very metropolitan city. There's not many free land available for agriculture. So that means it's more and more indoor farming, urban agriculture, rooftop farms. And for us, that's really fitting with what we do, because we want to increase production per meter square. And hopefully then we will be able to tap into these trends and opportunity of the market, because these growers now want to increase their production per meter square.
Mm-hmm. And is that are you considering an overseas kind of market, or potentially moving to Singapore as well?
As a market, definitely, and Singapore is a good place if we want to launch to the area, to the Southeast Asia area. Obviously, being Singapore is only 1 hour away from a lot of countries in the area, and Singapore as a government and also the different institutes also offering a lot of incentive for companies that wants to move there or do business in the area. So that's something that maybe not in the really short term, but in the medium terms, that's something that we will consider to expand our market.
Yep. And I suppose, Sarah, a lot of the companies, obviously there's a bigger market overseas. I saw a lot of the companies you introduced on another event saying that the market in the US is also obviously very big. What are your thoughts in terms of the kind of keeping the technologies in Australia, or do you think is there a need to create a bigger kind of critical mass here in Australia?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a kind of false dichotomy, I would say. Like innovation is sort of boundaryless across commodity lines and state lines and international boundaries, and startups are really good at pursuing where their customers are and where their markets are. I was interested to hear before that Doug said, some of the work he's doing was funded by the GRDC, and so that's an example of Australian research being funded overseas. And when you think about, well, let's make sure those companies kind of originate in Australia and deliver benefits to Australian growers, but then go offshore and deliver that impact globally in the ways that startups uniquely know how to do and have incentives to do. So from an Australian perspective, it's a world-class play building companies and creating innovations and getting beneficial products and services into the hands of growers. But in many cases, the market here will be too small to kind of sustain a venture scale company. And so they will be looking offshore, whether that's into Southeast Asia, Latin America, the US. Often that depends on the crop type and system that they're, playing into, access to capital, all the different factors for the companies. But for sure, starting in Australia is something that is, we think, a really good idea and something we're increasingly seeing as more kind of capital and talent and momentum are growing in Australia.
I should follow up very quickly just to clarify one thing that a comment that Sarah made, and that is that GRDC did not invest in the company. I want to make sure that's clear. GRDC invested in an international program that my university lab ran, which included a series of Australian universities. So GRDC invested in a large initiative, and out of that initiative, in fact, came Nusicer. On the other hand, chickpea in Australia is predicated on the international market. Australia produces more chickpea than any country in the world on a per capita basis, and the incentive for that is to sell into the international commodity market.
Yeah, it's such a good example of how we can, in Australia, use our amazing production agriculture system to spin off, and our amazing agricultural research to kind of spin out this agri-tech industry that complements it and leverages those strengths to deliver, products and services to the world as well. And some of that will be offshore, like in the case of yourself, Doug, and some of that will be onshore with the research that happens here. But that kind of innovation economy is what we're seeing grow, and that's really exciting.
Great. Fantastic. So in the last few minutes, I just want to do a little bit of, crystal ball gazing, or I don't know, asking for a magic, what do you want the most from everyone here? And in terms of AgTech innovation in Australia and New South Wales as well. And so there's been recently a lot of push in New South Wales towards innovation. So the New South Wales government has been running this inquiry called Accelerating Innovation in New South Wales. There's this Waratah research network that's been set up at the New South Wales government where various kinds of people or entrepreneurs can log in and find out who's the best researchers in particular fields. I wanted to go around the room and just find out, in your mind, what else should we do as a state, as a country, to help your AgTech innovation or other AgTech innovations as well? Maybe if I start with Saron. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's a big ask. I think maybe on maybe the university's place or the university's role in that. I think be continuing to invest in programs and facilities that really encourage their undergraduate students, postdocs or PhDs, pursue those ideas pursue the research that they were doing and actually take it from the lab to the field, or actually commercializing it and not having this really amazing primary research just sit on a shelf and collect dust. I think they're extremely well connected and an important source of research. And so I think there's really in a place that they can really play in essentially ensuring that we are continuing to strengthen Australia's place as AgTech centre and producing powerful technology that's growers sort of productivity. So I think if there are postdocs or PhD students who are watching this, I think, I encourage you to pursue those ideas and even if it's, just to sort of get comfortable and start learning about what it would actually take to commercialize, I think, just give it a go. That's probably,
All right, and then I'm just going to go around, but we'll stay maybe Eunice W. So Alex, and maybe we're running out of time. Maybe 30 seconds about what you like to see in the next.
Sure. So we've been very lucky to be supported by various grants, and I think the state government and also the federal government with the R&D tax benefit and all that. Without those, we will be dead for sure. I think one thing that's probably can be great is if there is a place, because one good thing about Australia, there's so many different climate, so we can try our technology in a place. If there's a hub somewhere that not just a knowledge hub, but a hub that you can actually set up experiments, trials, stuff like that, I think that would be really useful for the community.
Okay. Yep. Great. We'll note that. And then Sarah?
Yeah, I would say the role of government and is really to increase the birth rate of startups and increase the survival rate of startups. And one of the best ways they can do that is by building capability. And so many of these programs that train people to be entrepreneurs, to think like entrepreneurs, and to learn the power of entrepreneurship to deliver impact are really important. And the more of that we can see, rather than kind of picking winners at the government level, that kind of approach of I guess, building the infrastructure and enabling conditions is what I hope to see more of.
Excellent. I think that's a good landing spot. And I'm sorry, Doug, I know you're over in the US and I can't really ask you too much about New South Wales governments. But
I have a comment to make in that regard, though, Tom. If you don't, I have a comment to make in that regard, and that is it relates to something that Sarah said, and that is that she said that startups are very good at not recognizing borders. And, using chickpea as an example, the Australian chickpea market is predicated on the international market. So things that happen elsewhere in the world can expand opportunities in Australia, even if they don't happen in Australia. And of course, there are reasons to want to see things happen in Australia, but I think it's important to sort of keep that, to an extent, that sort of no borders idea in mind, because opportunities can emerge in places you might not anticipate.
Thanks, Doug. And I think that is really bringing us to an end. I'd like to just thank you all the speakers and thank you all listening in. I'm not sure if this is going to cut me off, but excellent session. And thank you everyone for joining in. Sorry, we're just out of time and I'm not sure how much longer this is going to go, but thanks everyone.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.